Yep, I'm here. Your audio is going in and out again now. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Good morning.
Peace and blessings to you.
Thank you, thank you. Welcoming my early risers.
Progress.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, Adam. Hello again, Latifa. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning.
We're happy you're here. We cannot wait.
I am not an early riser, so yes, this is a blessing that I am up this early. Happy to be here with you all.
Wake up, everybody. It's time to get up. Wake up, everybody. It's time to get up. Stay woke, stay woke, stay woke. It's time to get up. Stay woke, stay woke, stay woke. It's time to get up. We're healing, we're dealing, we're growing. Together, together, releasing. We're teaching, we're moving. Together, together, we're learning, discerning. We're striving. Together, together, we're leading, connecting, transforming. Together, together.
All right. Good morning again, everybody. So glad to have you all here with me this morning. I am Natasha Taylor. I am Deputy Director of Georgia Watch. For those who have not heard about Georgia Watch, we are obviously based here in Georgia. We are a statewide consumer advocacy organization, and we advocate on behalf of people all across the state who are marginalized or historically disenfranchised, and specifically in the areas of financial protection healthcare access, consumer energy, and civil justice. So a lot of our work is really rooted in protecting and informing consumers across the state. And when I say protect, we do that on the policy side, ensuring that there are policies at the state level that are equitable and that ensure resources are accessible to consumers. And then that inform is what I'm doing today and what we do year round, where we connect with people to inform them of either their rights around a certain topic, new policies that are in place that they need to be aware of. And then today, effective advocacy. And I want to set the ground of why this presentation is so near and dear to me, because when I first started this work with Georgia Watch, we did a lot of work with community health workers and doulas and trying to provide information about how to effectively advocate. And we do this long, like day-long presentation. And at the end of the presentation, a lot of our participants were like, we know how to advocate, within or maybe, on a small scale, but we don't feel comfortable reaching out to policymakers. We don't feel comfortable calling our state senator or our city council members to advocate for our communities. We don't feel empowered to do that. We don't feel like we're the experts to do that. We don't have the degrees to do that. And so I wanted to shift that narrative and really let people know that they have the power because they put these people in office, and how to effectively hold them accountable, and then how to really make an impact when it comes to advocating within the community. And through that workshop, we've been able to have community health workers, doulas, and other advocates show up at the Capitol and really stand up for themselves, their workforces, and their communities. So I'm really excited for this presentation today, but I wanted to lay that groundwork so that everyone kind of knows where I'm coming from. And so before I jump into that first slide, I like to kind of set the stage and see who's in the room. And I want to ask everybody here if you, like the many people that I encountered when I first started this work, have ever experienced a barrier when it comes to advocating, whether it was internal, just kind of self-doubt, or I tried to reach out and nobody answered my call or nobody was responsive, so that I can kind of know how to guide the conversation today. So that's the question. Has anyone ever experienced a barrier when it comes to advocating?
Yes, with housing.
With housing? And what happened?
Call the people in charge to ask a question. Oh, I'm not the one. I'll get someone to call back. And then just recently from my brother who's in a nursing home, and they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And I called the person who was the supervisor, and she said, "Oh, I'll have to get back to you." A simple question. And no one ever got back to me.
Mm-hmm. And that often happens with our senior services. I recognize that. I actually have a background in before Georgia Watch, I was with the Georgia Council on Aging. And so I personally identify with you, Cecilia, about how poorly they treat our older adults in our nursing homes. So we'll talk more. We'll talk more about how to have more of an impact in that space as well. Anyone else experience any barriers when advocating? All right, so we have pros on the call. Everyone else is a pro in advocating, so this is just a refresher. And you can also put it in the chat if you're not able to come off of mute. But Brother Sam, we'll go ahead and kick into the first slide as well. All right, so I'm going to just start out again by defining advocacy. What is advocacy? And here's a key kind of piece when it comes to advocating that can help us be more effective. So advocacy means actively supporting a cause and then trying to get others to support it as well. When I say trying to get others, we have a saying here at the Capitol, there's power in money which if you're trying to do something good, we typically don't have a lot of. And then there's power in numbers. So the more people you can get to show up with you and stand behind you, the more impactful your advocacy is going to be. So again, supporting a cause, but then trying to get others to support it as well. Advocacy also means speaking up and standing up for yourself or for others who've been treated unfairly, like Sister Latifa shared with us with her brother. Drawing attention to important issues that you care about, participating in the active support for a cause or an idea or a policy, and then using your influence to get others to support a meaningful cause. And when I say your influence, again, it doesn't mean that you have to have the law degree or you have to have a title. Your influence is your personal experience and your personal story, and then others that have shared in that story with you. Next slide, please. So why advocate? And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here on this call, but I really want to emphasize you have the opportunity to change the lens through which issues are viewed. And in today's, society, there are a lot of lenses floating around out there and a lot of people who don't value equity or fairness in our society. And so effective advocacy really is key in trying to get people who may have come from a different walk of life or a different background or were raised a certain way, how to get them to kind of see things through a different lens and not be so narrow minded. And so that's one kind of piece when I'm advocating that I really thrive on is how do I get this person that I know doesn't even believe in the word equity to hear me? How can I find some common ground? And it really is relationship building and trying to find something that we might agree on. It might be, that we like apples. How can I find a way to connect with this person to then get them to hear the important information that I'm trying to get across to them? And with that allows, our voices and our perspectives to be heard versus them kind of coming to the table with their ears shut off. And it helps level the playing field for the communities that I'm trying to represent. The other thing is elected officials, it says cannot on this slide, but they are not experts in everything. They really rely on other people and the communities that they represent to give them the information that they need in order to really accurately represent the communities that they serve. So they want to understand the people that they represent. Most of them do. If they don't, then that's a different conversation to have with your communities as far as selecting who represents you in office. It also helps you stay involved in the political process. And I know a lot of us don't want to be involved in politics, but there's politics and there's policy. And really the key here is trying to influence policies that will benefit our communities and trying to dismantle policies that disenfranchise us. Again, you can use your power to affect positive change. And again, that power is in your personal story, your lived experience, the lived experience of your loved ones. And it enables you to give back to your community in a positive way. And also stand up for those that may be unable to stand up for themselves. And then, of course, the cliche phrase, if not you, then who is going to do it? Oftentimes, again, especially in today's society, there's so much coming at us that it can kind of make us feel defeated, like we don't want to advocate or my voice isn't being heard, so we just give up. But if all of us think like that, then our voices won't be at the table. Again, it's important to have coalitions and cohorts of people for the days when you're tired. You can tap in your partners, and going back to that point that I said in the beginning, having that power in people. So on the days when you can't do it, someone else can step up and kind of take the torch. And one additional point before we go to the next slide as well, when you think about advocating, some people are nervous about that because they don't want to be the person out front. I don't want to be the person giving the speech or being on the news or talking to the press or talking to the elected official. But advocacy doesn't always mean you have to be the person out front. You can be the person collecting the data to support the policy that you're trying to get changed, or to support the issue that you're bringing to the table. You can be the person making the flyer. You can be the person doing the research on who needs to be contacted. So advocacy doesn't always mean that you have to be, the main point person. The real work is often done behind the scenes with all of the people getting that information to that main point person to go and make their pitch. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about the difference between advocacy and lobbying, because a lot of us who work for nonprofits or government institutions or educational institutions shy away from advocacy altogether because we have lobbying rules where you're not allowed to lobby. And oftentimes when we do this training, we have this where people say, well, I can't lobby because I work for the Department of Public Health or because I work for Georgia State University. And so that is true. You can't lobby, but you can advocate. And to what we often do is reframe advocacy as education. And we often have people from state departments and universities come to the Capitol or come to even local council meetings to educate key decision makers. So it really is about saying this issue is impacting our community, or this law that you're considering may have these effects on this population. That's really educating. Lobbying is saying, I want you to vote yes or no on this bill, or talking about a specific piece of legislation and asking for a vote. That's when you get into lobbying. It's that asking for a vote of yes or no where you cross the line. Before you cross that line, you can always educate and talk to people. So, for example, on this slide, instead of saying Senate Bill 123 is going to have a negative impact on our communities and we ask you to vote no, you can say, if Senate Bill 123 is about predatory lending, you can say the harmful effects of predatory lending are X, Y, and Z. That's how you can get around that fear of speaking with elected officials if you are restricted by lobbying laws. Any questions about the advocacy versus lobbying piece? Because I know that can get muddy for some people.
Yeah, I want to raise a question on that just to make sure I'm clear. So what I'm hearing is that if, as long as you stay in the realm of just sharing information about a particular bill or proposal, that's advocacy. But when we start crossing the line of you should vote this way, that's when it becomes lobbying.
Exactly.
Okay.
We've had, for example, we worked with a group of fathers who were uh, caught up in this legitimation process with their children, and it was really expensive for them to try to gain just 50% custody of their children, and our court system just wasn't set up to benefit the fathers. And many of them work for universities, so they were nervous about going to a legislative hearing about a bill that was going to reform the legitimation process because they said we can't lobby. So we worked with them to just share their story. How is this bill, the bill prior to this bill being introduced, how has the legitimation process impacted your ability to be a father? Just tell that story and talk about how this process is harmful to your family, it's harmful to your relationship with your children. And that's what they showed up and did. They didn't say vote yes or no, or lean one way or another, but here is what we have been experiencing with the current process, and it needs to change. And that with that, they were just advocating and educating the elected officials about the issue.
And I'm just curious, how did the vote go?
It was really amazing because prior to our workshop, the father said our voices aren't heard, the courts are set up against us, this is going to be pointless. And when they went and they shared their stories, the panel, the legislative panel, one said, first off, we apologize on behalf of the state for making it so hard for you to be a father, and we are committed to changing this process. And then the even bigger statement, because that was big enough, but the bigger statement was they invited the fathers to help participate in crafting the new law that would change this process and allow them to be fathers. So that's really effective advocacy there, where they recognize themselves as experts. They shared their lived experiences, they shared their stories, and now they're actively crafting a new bill in partnership with lawmakers around the legitimation process. So it was a huge win.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah. Any other questions about that advocacy versus lobbying piece? All right, next slide. All right, so some key advocacy tips, and I want to just let everyone know too. When I've talked about the fathers and our other advocacy trainings, our typical advocacy training is like a 6-hour training in person that we do, and people kind of come to the table with their ideas around policies, and we help them draft policy pitches. And we have done that virtually. So I do want to, before I forget, I want to say to everybody, we're giving you a lot of information in a short amount of time today, but I am always open to meet with you all individually or host a longer workshop. And it doesn't have to be the 6-hour one, but we've done 2 3-hour workshops with people like we did with those fathers. That was all virtual, and we did it after work hours. We go from 7 to 9:30 at night to really work with them around a specific issue. So I do want to put that out there to everybody. If there's specific issues that you want to focus on, we can hone in on that and work with your schedules. So in that longer training, we cover these advocacy tips more on a more detailed basis. But the first one is knowing who your elected officials are, who represents you at the national, state, and local levels, and what are their roles and responsibilities, so that we know who to contact about what. So if we want new sidewalks in our neighborhoods, we're not going to call the president or even our, state senators. We might be calling our local council members. And sometimes that's where we bump our heads too, because we're reaching out to the wrong people and we're like, they're not getting back to us. And sometimes it's that we're just not contacting the right officials. Sometimes we are, and they're just not getting back to us. And you have to be more strategic in getting them to respond. But that's one of the key things, is knowing who your elected officials are. And oftentimes at the state level, our community members don't even know that there are a state representative and a state senator here. We often hear about our federal elected officials. So that's another just learning curve there, is recognizing that there are people here within Georgia that represent you, that make the laws that more directly impact us on a daily basis. And that's across the nation as well. Once you know who your elected officials are, you can find a champion for your issue. So if your issue is around, again, senior care or education or maternal health, who already works in that space, who's already passionate about the issue. So it may not be your direct elected official, it might be someone else. So lining yourself up with someone who already champions the issues that you're concerned about, and then communicating with them regarding your issue. And when I say communicate, that can be via phone, showing up at their office, or if they represent you in your district, having coffee. Just kind of, it doesn't have to always be formal. Sometimes it's just meeting with them in your off session, or when they're not actively at the Capitol doing work. Anytime you communicate with them, always knowing and using the facts. In today's age, we have a lot of misinformation and disinformation. So making sure that you have the facts about your issue. And if not, finding a nonprofit that is already advocating in that space. Don't feel like you have to go and do a deep research paper on the issue unless you really want to. But there's often an advocacy group in all of our spaces that we're working in that already have the data and information that we need, and as well as universities. So here in Georgia, we work a lot with Morehouse School of Medicine to get our data around healthcare access and other local nonprofits. Always keep your message simple. Again, we're in an age where people are getting a lot of information very quickly, and it's hard to keep up with everything. So if you keep your initial message simple when you reach out, that's how you kind of hook people, and then you can keep the conversation going. So again, with that example of the fathers, we had them just share their story, and then they were able to continue to engage with the lawmakers after that hearing to continue to give more details about their experience. So keep your message simple on the front end. Um, and then make your voice heard by engaging others. That's again a key theme across the board. The more people you have at the table saying that this is an issue, the more impact you're going to be able to make. Next slide, please. So the last slide here talks about kind of what I talked about with the fathers, but to be an effective advocate, one is understanding the process. And that's again, knowing who your elected officials are, when to advocate, where do your elected officials meet, how can you reach out to them, how can you get their attention, and then the process of how policies are made. That's another kind of key piece that we dive into with our longer workshops. But how are the policies made so that, again, you manage your expectations with some people feel like I've made my speech, everything's going to change now, but really understanding the process to policy making. And it's a policy change is a long game. It's not immediate. So understanding that process can help us strategize a little better in our approach. Again, sharing your story is one of the most effective ways to influence policy. So again, and it doesn't always have to be talking to a decision maker. You could be talking to your community members, or for Sister Latifa, when you talked about advocating for your brother, are there other family members who have shared your experience that you can talk with and say, are you having the same issue with just getting someone on the phone? Can 10 of us show up to the office? And then they're probably going to start answering the phone. And if not, who do we elevate this issue to so that we can start getting some change made? So again, sharing your story with your community members because others are likely experiencing the same thing that you're experiencing. And then all of you collectively sharing that story with decision makers, whether it be a decision maker at an organization or at a business, all the way up to a decision maker at the federal level. Stories are important because they go ahead.
Yes, Sister Natasha, you did have a hand up, so I'm going to acknowledge Sister
Okay.
Shawnee. So, Sister Shawnee, go ahead, please.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning,
Good
Natasha.
morning.
I'm so happy to see you. I have a question about lobbying and just to be as honest as I can be, I haven't studied the intricacies of it, but throughout my childhood even or adult life, I have heard nothing really but low vibrational things about lobbying, lobbyists. And I know that this is your area of expertise, and I would love to hear from you um, how lobbying fits in this ecosystem around
Mm-hmm.
politics and advocacy and the importance of it, even though
Mm-hmm.
I have this low vibrational experience around it because people have talked about bribes and you know cronyism and being duplicitous. That like I just want to undo some of that because you wouldn't be in here talking to us about lobbying and lobbyists if it was a low vibrational. I've heard about it like it's like borderline criminal
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
behavior when people lobby that they're in somebody's pockets to do what they're doing. So can
Mm-hmm.
you please help me to grow? Maybe others in the space who have heard similar things.
Yeah. And thank you for that question. So the key thing I would say is to again know that difference between are you lobbying or are you advocating? Um, and I think all of us, not I think, I know all of us are already advocates, and all of us should be advocating and talking to elected officials and holding people accountable. So I want to say that across the board. All of us are already advocates, whether it be in our homes. And Shawnee, you talked about from a little girl. I always talk about advocacy for people that might be intimidated by it. I advocated to stay out after the street lights came on. That was me advocating as a little girl with my grandmother. How can I get my grandma to see where I'm coming from on this so I can stay out a little bit later? Sometimes I won, sometimes I didn't, but that's how I think about it. Even when I go to the Capitol, I'm just trying to stay out but past the street lights, and I'm talking to someone who feels like I need to be home before the street lights come on. How do I get them to hear where I'm coming from, right? So when I think about it like that, it makes me less afraid of talking to people that may not see things the way I see them. So I want to say that all of us can advocate without any rules. The lobbying piece is more complicated. One, because you have to be a registered lobbyist to lobby. And if you work for a nonprofit or a university, you are bound by rules around lobbying. So again, that lobbying is I'm really having those backdoor meetings, asking, for a vote, yes or no. Now, the negative connotation that comes along with lobbying yes, I was going to be a lawyer when I grew up. I was like, I'm good at this. I'm going to be a lawyer, but I'm an advocate. So, but I will say, lobbyists. I am a registered lobbyist. There are good lobbyists out there. We're just often overshadowed by the bad lobbyists because the bad lobbyists often work for the people from the larger corporations. Even down at our Georgia Capitol, there are two sides, and you'll see this really busy side with a whole lot of people, a whole lot of lobbyists. Those are the ones that are getting paid really well by the bigger corporations to do what they do. And when you go to the nonprofit side, it's really thin. It's me and a couple other people running around trying to make things happen. But there are good lobbyists out there. And I do want to lift that up that we exist. But our power, we've been able to take down really powerful lobbyists with communities showing up. When communities show up, because they see us coming and they're like, okay, here comes Natasha. She's about to ask for something. She's about to ask for a bill to, be introduced, whatever. But when I show up with our community health workers by the hundreds, you can't, the person over there getting paid, $500,000 a year can't compete with that. You can't compete with community voice. You can't compete with a person's real life experience. So the lobbyists often come with a lot of, data points and trying to say this isn't a real thing, this doesn't exist. But when a person walks in and says, I've personally been affected by something, then it makes my job as a lobbyist a lot easier to say, so you heard that story, right? This bill needs to pass, or this bill is a bad bill. So I hope I'm kind of getting to where you want me to get to, Shawnee, but there are good lobbyists, but and especially at the federal level, you're always going to hear about the bad guys because that's where the money is. And a lot of people will, I always say everyone has a price. A lot of people will sell out for a certain price and lobby for issues that aren't beneficial to their communities. But there are the good guys out here. I am one of them. And what we aim to do is empower communities with this information to say, if we can get you all to stand behind the small group of us that are trying to do this work, then we can really start to change the narrative and change the systems that keep us oppressed. I see Anna, I met a group of lobbyists in North Carolina, didn't get a good vibe. Yeah, but most of the time, I will say the larger majority of lobbyists are not good people. You know, and that's all. I mean, it's tough, but even with the bad lobbyists, we do have to cross paths with them. And I'll give you just another little tip of strategy. When I cross paths with them, I'm trying to hear what they're saying. What are you saying? Why do you think this is a good bill? Or why do you think this is a bad bill? What's going on? Because I want to know what they're saying in the ears of the lawmakers, so then I can find out how to debunk that. So it's don't avoid them. I always want to know, like, what's the enemy talking about? What are they saying? Like, what are our opposition putting out there in the atmosphere, so that I can combat that, or I can again go out to the community and say, this is what's being said. Who can come and tell their story and show that that's not true? That's how you're effective. So I get excited when I see the bad guys floating around. I walk right up to them. What are y'all talking about? What's going on? Why do you think this is a good bill? And then we keep moving from there. So that points back to, the points here. they ground those stories, those community stories ground policy in real life. It takes all the politics away. I always give the example of the Sarah McLachlan commercial. We see the dog with the sad eyes, and it makes everyone want to go out and adopt a puppy. Like that emotional pull that happens when you see, someone in harm, or you see a person, or in that case, a pet that needs assistance, or you hear someone saying, I'm struggling with this issue, politics go out the window. And that's why oftentimes around even like our healthcare, you might have been getting a lot of reach out of people saying, I need your story. I need you to tell me how your healthcare premiums are increasing, because we're trying to stop, our healthcare premiums from going up. And again, recognizing that policy is a long game, we didn't win that fight, but we are still actively working to say, okay, we didn't win the federal one. How can we win it at the state level? What can we do at the state level? And not being deflated or defeated by that, but again, kind of going underground and strategizing and saying, how do we continue to combat the powers that be? And it's not an easy game, but we have to do it.
Hey, Sister
So
Natasha.
yeah,
Yeah, I want to just jump in real quick. Do a time check. It is 7:36.
yep.
Um, so I want to thank everyone who's been here and who is here, who's staying with us, and just ask that you stay with us for a few more minutes. We're about to
Mhm.
close out. We do have a
Yeah.
couple of things in the chat. I wanted just to read it out before we close out for today.
And I think we're on the last slide, Sam. If you advance to the next slide, I think that was the questions slide. Yep.
Okay, great.
So we're there.
All right, so just in the chat, Sister Shoni did come back to say I've always been an advocate too, even when I didn't understand the meaning of the word. Hard to believe. Um, Sister Kaisha also seconded your point. Kids who argue a lot are told they will be lawyers when they grow up. I knew I had that in my high school, and actually one of the students who was told that actually became a really big time lawyer. So so that happens. And I think you already wrote Sister Anna's you already read out about her vibes with the lobbyist that she met in North Carolina. Um,
Yeah.
so with that, we'll close out the chat. And go ahead, Sister Natasha.
I just want to open it up for questions. And again, even given the questions and comments in the chat, just kind of re-energize us to stay the course, and keep the fight going. We've been here before as a culture. We've done it before. It's unfortunate that we have to keep doing it, but we have to keep doing it. And again, I think the more strategic and effective that we can be as a community, the more impact we'll have in the long run.
Sister Shoni, you go ahead.
Sorry about that. I'm on my phone this morning. Tasha, I'm curious about you, but just this work in general around advocacy. I'm an advocate and an activist. And one of the things that I encounter in these spaces, and I advocate around a lot of things, all things women and girls for sure, all things Black and brown people. Um, and I'm an activist as it relates to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive justice. So, saying that, I've encountered a lot of advocates that need to work on emotional intelligence. And I don't know if you've encountered this too, but I find that folks sometimes move into advocacy because of trauma they've experienced. And, because I'm in the reproductive health and reproductive justice realm, um, I witness a lot, like on a national level, even internationally. And I have concerns sometimes about folks who are in it and are working through trauma stuff for themselves and that leaking out on other people. So my question for you is, how do you take care of your side of the street? And I mean you literally. I know this is loaded for an ending, but this is our space. So we
Yeah.
get to say how this goes. But how do you work towards making sure you're good, meaning you, Natasha, and then also supporting people with understanding that advocacy requires that you continuously are working on yourself and checking where you're at inside of your advocacy so that you do no harm, even if it's
Mhm.
unconscious.
Mhm.
Is the
Thank you
question
for
clear?
yeah,
All
it's
right.
very crystal clear. Thank you for asking that. I think I take care of myself. I'm very real with myself and with my community, and I'm stressed out on a daily basis. This is a stressful it's a stressful career because again, it's like and you know, in today's times it's like every morning you wake up like what now? Like what is happening? So it just feels like you're constantly hitting brick walls, and so I don't try to mask that anymore. I'm very outward, like, y'all, I'm stressed out. This is a lot. And often when I say that to my community, I have a cohort of other nonprofits and advocates that we work together. They're like, me too. And when we hear that, it's like, okay, so we're not, so I'm not crazy. We're all going crazy right now. Okay, cool. And we're able to lean on one another and take loads off of one another and kind of share the heaviness of what we're doing. So I would say my tip to myself is being real with myself, and then also stopping and recognizing that the fire is can't be put out in a day. So there's some days where I just have to stop and go outside and go for a walk and breathe, and decompress and focus on my family or focus on my loved ones, or just shifting my energy to advocate for my own mental health. So that's what my kind of key tip internally. Externally, when I work with other advocates, and I'll point back again to the fathers who come in with the emotional trauma of trying to be a father. And they came to our first meeting charged and aggravated and angry. And it's like we couldn't get anywhere because they were like, no one's going to listen. It's just, it is what it is. And nobody cares. And they were angry. And I was like, well, share your story and tell us how you would say that to an official. It was just angry. And I said, people aren't going to hear that. You have to figure out a way to tell your story where it will fall on, non-deaf ears. And we worked and worked through that trauma and allowed them to share and vent, and then re-shifted that energy to say, if you recognizing that it's not just about you, it's about the larger community of fathers that aren't in this room, that are also being affected, that are scared to speak up. You represent them. And when they heard that and realized that if they come with fire and they, completely, obliterate this chance to be at the table, then they're doing a disadvantage to the larger community of fathers that they're representing. When they understood that, they were able to go and still have the passion, but effectively communicate the issue, and their experience in a way that allowed them that seat at the table, provided them the seat at the table. So I hope I answered your question, Shawnee.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much, sis. I appreciate the
Absolutely.
authenticity and the candor.
Thank you. And thank you for the work you do. I know I want to be like you when I grow up with that fierceness.
I was exhausted sometimes, but thank you.
I'm telling you, like I'm tired. So, so yeah, any other questions? And I want to say that with just us on this call, this is a cohort. This is a group where you can say, I'm leaning on we're leaning on each other. It's not easy work. It's hard work. It's a long game. Um, but I think about even Dr. Martin Luther King and his advocacy. He had a team behind him, and there was the movie. I forget the brother's name of the guy who put the whole March on Washington together. Like, there's a team of people behind those leaders that we see. They're not doing it alone. And that's how I'd like to think about us as a group, as a cohort. Like we have to lean on one another, lean on our strengths. Don't be afraid and be honest. Today I'm tired. Today I'm stressed out. Who can help? Who can tap in and take this, small little task or big task off of my plate so that I can recoup and recover? I think that's how we continue to move forward as a community.
Sister Natasha, before we head out, we have one more hand.
Yeah.
Sister Latifa, please.
Thank you. Um, when you were talking about the brothers going in and they were just angry about what had happened, a similar thing happened. There was an organization that was decided by the government, a portion of the government, local government, that they would be the guardians for my brother. And they were the guardians straight through, even before he was in this nursing home. And I always kept notes about what was happening with him when he was there and where he is now. So my his daughter, my niece, and we put in to be the official named guardians. And the attorney for us, who was representing us, was sharing with us how you go through doing this thing and that thing, and that we get letters, we'll get a form, we may get this. And because of him explaining to us what had to be done, and I had my notes, when we went before a judge and we told her what was happening, because the lady from the other organization just outright lied. She was saying that they took care of him, they knew they did this, that, and the other on the dates. But she also had said when she was talking that she didn't know where my brother was, so they couldn't help him. So when the judge made note of that, you said that you were trying to find him and you were helping, but you'd also stated that on this date you didn't know what had to happen. So when it was time, when it got time to us to share what was happening, and we said on this date this thing happened when he was at the other nursing home. This before the hearing was over, the judge said, "I've made my decision, and Miss Douglas and Miss Abdul-Jabbar will be the custodians." And I felt like, oh, if I was virtual and my niece was there, I would have just hugged that lady, because we had a judge who understood what was happening and who listened, didn't just hear, but she truly listened. And my anger had started cooling down before we got there, but definitely it was gone when that judge ruled for us.
And I just want to shout you out, Sister Latifa, because again, you just described effective advocacy. You were angry, but you went in there with the facts, you had your notes, and it is a relief when you see that advocacy work. And like you said, it was your work. That the judge didn't listen just because she was a good person. The judge listened because of the effective advocacy that you came to the table with, and how you strategize. You may not have seen it as that in that way, but that's really what you did. You strategized, you got your data together, you got your information, and you presented a case that the lawyer couldn't even fight. So I just want to shout you out, for being successful in that. And thank you for sharing that story, because that story, the more you tell it, the more encouraged other advocates are going to be to feel like their voices will be heard as well.
All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Sister Natasha. Thank you for those who contributed. Let's move on as we begin to slowly close out.
Thank you.
To contact Sister Natasha, her phone number is 404-525-1085. You can also reach her on Facebook at facebook.com/natasha.e.taylor3 / and also by email at ntaylor@georgiawatch.org. So different ways to reach out to our sister. So please take it down. I should also be going into the chat. Sister Raina will be posting that in for us. So if we haven't done so already, I know that should be happening soon. All right. So again, thank you again, Sister Natasha, for your presentation this morning. I know it's the first one, so welcome to Woo, and hopefully it won't be the last one. So moving on to our monthly automated love offerings. This is something that we can do in the increments of 25, 50, 75, and 100. And again, the love offerings help support the work here at WU, help support all the technology that needs to be a part of what we do here. The Zoom, for instance, just the Zoom alone, it's something that needs to be taken care of. And and all the other pieces of what we need to be able to, again, continue to keep WU going. So you can make increments of $25, $50, 75, or 100. There's an associated bit.ly for it. So if you want to make a $50 donation, you can go to https://bit.ly/WULOVE50 and make your automated monthly $50 offerings. So we definitely do appreciate those who have set those up and encourage anyone who has not set it up and who is in a position to do so to please think about setting it up for WU to keep this work going. One second. All right, so next up, coming up tomorrow, Thursday, January 8th, our extended session. Once you see your environment, you can't unsee it. Facilitated by Queen A. So that's our extended session, hour and a half session. So join us for that tomorrow at 7 a.m. And if we have any new members here today, welcome, welcome, welcome. Here at WU, we are a community where we come to learn, elevate, and ascend on a daily basis. And again, it doesn't matter who it is that presents in front of us, there's always some elevation, there's always some learning that happens, and there's always some ascension that happens. So we welcome you and hope that you come back. Our schedule, we do Sunday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, our extended sessions. So those go from 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. And our shorter sessions go from on Monday and Wednesday, and they go from 7 a.m. to 7:30-ish. Sometimes we get a little bit longer, but usually we're done by 7:45. I encourage you to join our Facebooks if you're ever in a situation where you can't join directly. We are streaming live on Facebook. And also, if you haven't done so already, you can get your WU alert sent to WU Nation at 74121. And to stay in contact with us, stay in touch with us, you can register at the Wake Up Movement. On Facebook, we have two Facebook sites. They're really the same, but there's different ways reaching them. One of them is our private, which is the bit.ly WU community. You can register for that one. And bit.ly WU Nation, which is the public Facebook page. And also on Instagram, we are at Wake Up Everybody Virtual. On YouTube, bit.ly WU on YouTube. So again, register for that. You can go back and see all of the prior sessions of WU if you go to the YouTube page. And also, you can reach out to us by email at info.wakeupseries@gmail.com. And if you have, by email, if you have any ideas, any thoughts, any offerings, if you want to become a facilitator, if you want to volunteer and become an admin, please reach out to us, contact us, and we will have someone. We'll definitely get back to you on that issue. All right, so now I'm going to take down the slides and open and ask you to unmute yourselves and give Sister Natasha her deserved love shower.
Thank you so much, Sister Natasha.
Thank you, sister, for your time and information that you shared with us. It's so amazing that
So
you
much. Yeah, we need your work in
took
this
the
world.
opportunity
And I trust that we'll
Be
be
here
able
for
to
us as a community. Gives me more things to think about.
Peace. It's a great presentation.
And I
Thank you
really
for
appreciate that. And I look forward to
your
hearing
work.
more from you. I hope you all have a
Continue to
wonderful
take
day
care of
today.
yourself.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Peace and blessings.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. We will see you all here tomorrow at 7 a.m. Thank you again, Sister Natasha.
Thank you, everybody.